Thank you, Saudamini, and a very warm welcome to you all to this session, which is very, very special because we have Sarnath Banerjee here with his new book, Absolute Jafar, and we have Andreas here with several of his books. Before we get into it, I'd just like to ask both of them to say something about their new books.
Good afternoon. First of all, I would like to say I'm very happy to be here in beautiful at the beautiful literature festival. If we talk about the geography of belonging, today I have the impression to belong here. We were together now. Outside we ran into Mr. Anand, Vishy Anand, the famous chess champion, and I'm a huge fan of chess, and I'm quite starstruck and running with a smile because he's the Indian grandmaster I always rooted for. And there's one Indian artist whose work I love, and he's here with me as well. It's Sarnath Banerjee, so it's really I'm really happy about it. And my last book, my new book, is a poetry collection. It's called Haus, ohne, Türen, published by Droschl in Graz. It means house without doors, or doorless house. And it's a collection of poems I've written during the last 16 years. I always wanted to become a poet when I was very young. I had the impression that this is the ideal life for me, to travel around and live in a very enthusiastic and extreme way, and in the right moment to write a poem. Later I found out that it's not always like that. And so it happened that I wrote a novel first, and the publishing house said, yeah, they liked the novel, and they almost forced me to continue to write novels. And so I wrote 6 novels, and after 6 novels I've earned the right to publish a poetry collection. So the best of 16 years, and I'm very happy about this. There are poems about, a lot of love poems. Maybe all of them are love poems, but some of them talk about places too. Love about places, which can be hate too sometimes.
Thank you. Sarnath, would you like to say?
Thank you very much, and thank you for coming this afternoon. I wrote this book, Absolute Jafar, because I was forgetting. And as you get older, your memory starts fading. I had to leave the country, India, 2010, because of a romantic decision I took of marrying a Pakistani. And we lived for 5 years in Delhi, and then it was getting harder and harder to deal with the home ministry, and then eventually we decided we had to leave, and Berlin that time seemed like a cheap alternative, and we left. When we left Delhi, it felt like anything was possible in Delhi. You know, it was like a late Edo period, floating generation, to the point that I remember once this drunk man was asking a tandoori guy who was selling tandoori chicken, which is roasted chicken, which we find in Indian street. And he comes and he asks this guy, "Yahan pe machli ka paya milta hai?" Machli is fish, and paya is the chicken legs, which we, And Delhi felt like even machli ka paya was possible to get, because it was just a land where anything, you just wish it and it happens. And I was forgetting that a little bit. And it was not nostalgia, it was not like long-winded lamenting about the past, but it was trying to locate me in a particular historical time. We'll talk about it more later. And the movement to Berlin, which that time was soft Moscow, It was a city which was held together by poverty, but sexy poverty, you know. And a child was born, and he was growing up with his own particularities. A lot of the book is about a father trying to put a child to bed with his own particularities of growing up in Karachi, Calcutta, Delhi, but being surrounded by a very migrant-heavy space in Berlin called Neukölln, and it's a deeply personal book. So it kind of spans Karachi, Delhi, Berlin. It's kind of a holding together a history of feelings, how I felt at that time. I was thinking that I would forget it, and I'm forgetting a lot as I'm kind of, rolling through my 50s. So I just wrote it. Personal project. Thanks.
So that's interesting because you're talking about feelings and how memory is so deeply connected and how place is deeply connected with both memory and feelings. But Andreas, would you like to tell us something more about how geography has figured in your work and how it has been informed by it?
Some of the poems talk about specific places, yeah. It starts with a poem about Graz, the town where I come from, where I was born. But I lived there for almost 25, 27 years, and I figured out that I could not really, I always wanted to write, but I could not really write in Graz. And then I left Graz and I lived in Vienna for a month, and I started to write a book about Vienna. Then I was in Scotland for sure. I wrote a book about Scotland. I wrote a book about France and so on. So it's quite interesting. I think I really belong to Graz, the town where I come from, but I could not write there, and I write about all the other places. And with the poems, it's a bit like that. Also, some of the poems just play, I don't know, at a non-specific place. Yeah, I'd say.
So is poetry then, or your writing then, a way of getting to know a new place as well?
Yeah, I've the impression that I write especially about places I do not know much about, because that's interesting, that's new, and we always seek the new things where we learn something, and yeah, that's the challenge and the adventure, yeah, that's the reason I'm so happy I'm here for the first time in India. Yeah.
So we can expect now a Jaipur poem or a set of a collection.
Yeah, a whole cycle. Yeah.
Sarnath, the other half of this session's title is Belonging, the geography of belonging. And what do you think? Do we belong to geography, or does geography belong to us? And how do these, come together in your work?
So, like Andreas said, I do believe that I personally, not believe, but I personally am like more prone to, like, when poets or fiction, people who write fiction, when they write about the local, they locate themselves in ways which are not informational or factual or newsy, but a deeper, again, going back to the history of feelings, kind of history of emotion, and a deeper understanding. So I'd much rather read Andreas's understanding of Jaipur than like a big, like, non-fiction work on, like, that traces the history and geography and whatever in Jaipur, because information has become like an easier kind of a thing. It's the processing, it's Andreas's take on that local that I'm more interested in, which is why I make a strong case for fiction, because that's how I get to know the sense of a place more than the place itself. Your question regarding, like, sort of whether you belong to a place or we all live in enchanted places. We all live in our own make-believe spaces. I've lived in Delhi. I remember when I first moved to Berlin, I was looking at the weather report of Delhi. When the AQI hits whatever insane this thing.
As it is.
Yeah, and it gives me no pleasure to be in Berlin, because I somehow kind of can smell the air, the fragrant air of Delhi sitting there. So it's a landscape which we people who migrate at some point of time, in order to just survive the foreignness, survive the absolute difference of specificity and particularity, the needing to explain your context all the time. You create an imaginary space for yourself, which is where the late night stories that the character who's I don't know whether the video works. Sorry, it was last minute, but anyway. So this character in a box is the central character, and every night he puts the child to bed with stories of Karachi, of Inspector Ali and Sumo Jin, who go and through the jinns they talk about like the architecture. This is one part of the book, the architecture, the hauntedness. You know, a lot of the book is about hauntings, haunted architecture, haunted spaces, eccentric relatives, annoying relatives, food. This is basically the father trying to resurrect a particularity the child is not interested in. For him, it's doner kebab and, Friday for Future or Palestine demonstration. So it's completely different worlds, and they're tragically trying to put it together. So yeah, so I think we create an imaginary landscape. And books are the best way to create imaginary landscapes.
Andreas, have you ever given some thought to this, that when we move out of a geography and move to another geography, I know it has deeply informed Sarnath's work, which is what he was talking about, but is that something that you have also experienced? I mean, this is outside of course, traveling to a new place and figuring that place out, but how much has geography and the belonging to it informed your work?
Yeah, I think there's always some kind of interesting game between belonging and longing. Yeah, sometimes it's even possible to long for a place where you are or where you belong. Maybe that means that you wish that the place would be a different one or would develop in a different way. So I think there are a whole lot of things going on. I'm not an immigrant and not a migrant, but my mother, she came from Slovenia to Austria. She was in some, you could say she was a privileged immigrant because she was an immigrant of love. She fell in love with my father in Croatia, and then she came to Austria very young. Without a word of German, she learned to speak German, and now she lives here for a long time, and speaks perfectly, and worked here in a job she did not like very well, and I have a huge respect for her. So maybe I have this story within me, I was always some kind of advocate for immigration problems, also in the magazine I'm editing and so on.
Sarnath, would you like to tell us how you would situate your new book, Absolute Jafar, in your creative journey, which has really spanned, both the written word and the visual format so well? So not just graphic novels, but you've done, art and performance art and films, audiovisual. So how do these all come together, and where do you situate Absolute Jafar in that journey?
I feel I'm slowly winding up. The picnic is ending, and we're packing up. Sounds a bit dark, but it feels like there are fewer years, and comics is a very labor-intensive. I'm not saying poetry is not labor-intensive, because it takes years to write like a good poem. But the amount of labor that goes into like making a comic book is just, sometimes I just wonder whether I should just let go of that. But this is the only thing I can do, and I've been doing it for it's kind of funny to be a 53-year-old person saying that I do comics for a living. And I've done it for 25 years, and I don't know how I managed to do it. So it's finally, at the end of the day, comics is a language which I speak without any accent. It's a language I speak not perfectly, but because with text and image, you can create meanings. I feel that text individually and images individually cannot do together. It creates an uncanny combination which you yourself don't know. It's like you put two actors together, given them some line, but what comes out of it, you have no idea, no clue. So I like that uncertainty and that sort of, the precarity of writing comics. I mean, as I was telling Andreas, I don't really know whether the drawing is going to come. Every time I draw, I'm like sort of shivering because I don't know whether like it'll end up looking like what I'm trying to look. There's a Hindi song by Kishore Kumar, he's our Ginsberg. In the song it says, "Jana tha Japan, pahunch gaye Cheen, samajh gaye na." He's like, I wanted to go to Japan, but I ended up in China. Do you understand my problem? Not that China and Japan are, so China is any worse than Japan. So anyway, so sometimes what happens with your drawing is that you're trying to tell a story, and the story takes you to a completely different world. So I like that surprise element in all the things that I do, which is performance, lecture, comics, and also I have a gallery practice, meaning I also do individual works and stuff like that. I think mostly it is, I was telling you that I take my job as an artist as a timekeeper. We are keepers of time, and I think to me, even Andreas is a keeper of a particular time. We are going through certain emotional or certain kind of, upheavals. We can remember what that afternoon in Delhi in '92 felt like, when the only exciting thing that would happen on television was Millie is going to be shown, and you spend the whole week waiting for one sad movie to be shown, right? Where the central character dies of cancer. So I'm saying that can we remember those times? And you can say movies can do it, whatever, but the movies are entirely transplanted by the director, what you want to see for how long. Comics does not have that rigidity. Go back and forth. So these are some of the advantages of the medium. But of course, it's a quieter, smaller medium, very specific. It's not for mass yet. Should not be also, I think, in a sense. But yeah.
Andreas, you've also had quite the creative journey. You're a poet, and you just told us that you had to write 6 novels to finally get a collection of poetry out. But you're also a guitarist, and you sing for a band, and you edit a fantastic literary magazine. So how do you see all of this in terms of your creative arc, these different forms of expression?
Yeah, it's quite interesting because for me, all these things feel quite the same. I think in general, I just always want to write a poem, and then sometimes this poem happens to be a novel or a song or even a magazine, which I was lucky enough to become the editor of. It's called Manuskripte. It's the oldest and I think most renowned literary magazine in Austria. It exists since 1960, and the first publications of, for instance, Peter Handke or Elfriede Jelinek, who won the Nobel Prize for Literature, were in this magazine when they were very young, and so it's really famous. And we try to carry on in this spirit and to present new voices and very famous voices too. And one of the covers I love the most of the last years is this one by Sarnath Banerjee. I don't know who had the idea of putting us together on the stage, but it was
it was it was entirely coincidental. We didn't know that this is going to happen.
It's fantastic. And this was part of a collaboration with Steirischer Herbst. It's Styrian autumn. Styria is the region where this magazine comes from and where I live, in Austria, in southern Austria, and a great festival, a huge festival, similar to this. And here we published a great graphic novel by Sarnath Banerjee. Do you want to show it? About 2 writers. About the Indian writer Tagore and Styrian writer Peter Roseka. You probably never heard about Peter Roseka. In Austria, it's the other way around. But they were typical authors for their countries at the same time, and very different people. Yeah, Tagore was a cosmopolitan writer, and Roseka became some kind of nationalist writer at the time, yeah. And they have similar biographies, but very different too, yeah.
Yeah, pastoral. I mean, he's more like part of the sort of poet of the land.
Yeah.
kind of a thing. And it's interesting because Tagore got the Nobel Prize the same year Peter Rosiger was also nominated. Tagore got it, he didn't get it.
Yeah.
And there's been a bone of contention over that.
Because he was involved in some anti-Semitic and nationalist.
Yeah. So the big scandal is that, like, that this was an anti-Semitic reasons why he did not get the Nobel Prize and Tagore got it. And interestingly, we talk about like identity politics, global South and global North, white versus brown. Tagore was always very cosmopolitan. He traveled to London several times, tried to get a law degree, didn't like it, had friends like Yeats, and lived in Tagore loved changing homes, so this is his favorite home, which is on a barge in his, and he loved moving from one house to another because he could afford it. And for Rosiger, first time he left his abode in the hill, like literally a very frugal lifestyle where they didn't have a school, he came to Vienna. And Vienna for him was like the most international thing that he's ever been. Or Graz, was this? He went to Graz.
Yeah, he lived in Graz.
Vienna, Graz.
Even Graz, which is way smaller.
Meanwhile, Tagore was moving between like his various houses. So it's also very interesting. It complicates the global South, global North conversation.
Yeah. And Rosiger was quite a good writer, despite his
he's a good
political views in the later years, but he was a good writer.
It was unfortunate that Hitler liked his poems. And therefore, he was incorporated as Hitler's, Steve Peter,
But
Rosiger would not like me to move to Austria, though. Or would he? We're talking about somebody long dead, but...
So when did Rosiger die?
When did he die? I think after World War I or that time,
He's probably Tagore's age. Yeah, same age.
So, just to, because both of you share something which is German, the language. Sarnath, you live in Germany, though I don't think you write in German, but a lot of your work is being translated into German. Certainly the essay and manuscript, the visual essay is in German. And of course, Andreas, you write in German and you're a native German speaker. But Sarnath lives in Germany. We were just talking about this. And you live in Austria, but you speak German. So would the two of you like to say a little bit about how the German spoken in both is different and same? Because there are certain political nuances around it. And if you would like to talk about them, it would be very interesting to hear.
I'll start with some idioms. The best part of German, it's one of the most expressive languages. I mean, they even have words for like, I sometimes come up with strange words like, is there a word for panic of arriving at the airport too early, not too late? Sometimes you arrive at the airport because you don't want to be a pendu, and you kind of arrive at like 4 hours before like your flight. I sometimes think the Germans probably even have a word for that. So maybe you could tell some of the words like, some of these idioms which are quite funny.
Funny idioms. I don't know. There's some.
Like I only know the station or something.
Maybe Fremdschämen is an interesting word. It's an invention, German invention. If you're ashamed of the behavior of someone else.
Yes, absolutely.
That's quite typical, maybe, for Germany.
Yeah,
and of course in Austria we have our words, which...
Austrians are funnier people. Germans are always envious of the Austrians to be. Both are very funny. Well, the big myth is that Germans are efficient and they're not funny. It's actually the reverse. They are actually quite funny, but they're super inefficient. If you had a plumbing problem or a heart attack, you have to wait till the man comes back from his Urlaub, from his vacation. You've got a heart attack, you have to predict it like 3 months in advance, so that you get an appointment. It's, funny they are, I mean, yes.
Yeah, but I would say they speak the same language. I mean, they write the same language.
Yeah.
But if you speak it, there's a different melody, and some words are different. And for the Germans, Austrian sound very cute and very funny too. And they say, oh, say it again, it's so funny when you say it. And for Austrians, they say, oh, the Germans, they sound like it has been written, you know, it's too correct, and we don't like their
I think they're envious. They're envious of Austrians because they eat better. Like if you ever mistakenly ever dated an Austrian person, and you've tasted the food that you have, and the person has left you at some point, then all your life you're going to lament the loss of that Austrian lover that you've had, who made the best food. And Germans, food-wise, are a little like, I mean, they would accept it before anybody else. So that's one thing we envy about Austrians.
Yeah, and Germans love to come to Austria for holidays, in the winter and the summer all the time. And most immigrants are from Germany. You know, the Austrian right-wing party keeps saying the immigrants, they have to learn German, but they speak better German than we.
Yeah.
I think both. I think large parts of Europe and indeed the world are seeing these, far-right movements, and both Austria and Germany are seeing their rise. And how, and we were just talking about this, that also in a post-NATO world, there is going to be a greater nationalism, greater militarization, which always sort of translates into anti-immigrant, anti-outsider, whoever, anybody who is different. So would you, the two of you as creators, how do you see that affecting, has it affected your work? And you, Sarnath, of course, you've migrated to Germany, but you too, Andreas, were talking about how things are different now.
Yeah, of course, something has changed in the last years, but it was the rise of the right-wing party in Austria, even before Ukraine and Donald Trump. So in Austria, in the polls, they're about 40%. I think that's the maximum, but that's really a lot right now. They're not in the government, but in my region in Styria, they are in the government, and the governor is from the right-wing party. And since then, there were a lot of protests going on for good reasons, especially in the cultural scene, because they changed a lot of important people who decide about fundings at once, overnight, and they wanted to cut a lot of things like our magazine concerning the fundings. But there was a lot of protests going on, and I found myself in the position to write political speeches together with a colleague, a good friend, Max Höfler. I would have never thought that one day I would write something like this. It was not in my interest. But I think it's important now, and I love to do it, and it's great fun too. But I would not mind if it would not be necessary anymore.
Yeah, I agree with Andreas. I wanted to add a couple of, because my book deals with this. The idea of a foreigner is different in Europe. The idea of a foreigner is different in India. You have to understand that we've always had foreigners moving through us. Megasthenes, Hyun Sang, or however you pronounce him. All these people, Fahen, all these people moved around, and they made us understand our country also in a good way or a bad way, and then the colonial travelers and stuff like that. Foreigners is conceived very differently in Germany. I'm not talking about Austria, because Germany has its own sort of, ideas about foreigner. And last year I was at the Berlin Biennale, and my project was called Critical Imagination Deficit, or CID. Critical imagination deficit is that you have no problem with critical theory and critical understanding, because that's taught in universities if you do an MA, but you don't have an imagination of what another person would be like, would feel like, how her modernity is, how they wake up in the morning. Like, for example, you can't describe to a German person from Berlin, who's a curator or whatever, that nobody wakes up in Delhi feeling post-colonial. that we wake up feeling hungover, we feeling triumphant, if at all colonial sometimes, depending on what the news tells us that day. But we don't wake up feeling post-colonial. Now, trying to explain that, but a lot of migrants also play the game. They would like themselves kind of, do post-colonial dal, decolonial tomato, in a matar paneer with free tomatoes mixed in. So the book is full of all these ideas about how also we, brown people, also play this game because of funding and, you need to like do the checklist and identity politics and all that. So the problem is the Germans' inability to understand anything that is not, it has to be understood from their own reference. And that reference has been endemic over many, many, many years. Foreigners who have written about Berlin are like Americans or French. It doesn't really, not from this side. That would not work. So, a society over a long period has not diversified at all. I'm going to, it's a long conversation. We only have 12 minutes. So I'm going to leave it at this sort of, cliff edge and pass it on to Swati.
I think at this point, let's ask if anybody has any questions so that, we can engage in more of a conversation. So please put up your hands if there are any questions. Yes, the gentleman in the front.
When you talk about your experiences with moving and belonging, what does the process and the timeline look like to where you feel like you now belong in the new place that you've moved to versus where you've came from? And just like what that mental process is like of feeling now this is your home and you belong in a new country.
Are there any more questions? Yes, we'll just take all the questions together and then respond.
Hello everyone. Since we live in India and we get to know about Europe and Germany via YouTube and such mediums, so what we are seeing right now, like there is a lot of Islamization of whole of Europe and Germany. Is that true, or is it just a propaganda that we receive? Because we have no idea.
There were a couple more hands, if you could please, yes.
Hello everyone. I have a question for sir. He mentioned that he is married to a Pakistani wife. And as you come from India, was it also at home a happy honeymoon period time all the forever? Or was it like interconflicts that has happened or that has affected India and Pakistan both? Has it affected also the household or the very daily life or your work as well? Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Right at the back, please. The lady in black.
You remember the questions, right? You remember the questions?
Hello, I just had a very small question. Does the concept of a global citizen exist, and can it be realized? That's it.
The question, how long does it take to kind of belong to a place? Yeah. How long, do you want to take that? How long does it take to belong to a place? Question.
I don't know if I'm a
where you belong.
because I belong to somewhere. And to write about a place, sometimes it starts right away. And for my last novel, it took me 20 years, and then I started to write a book about it. So that depends.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know on what. Yeah, to what. Yeah.
BBC Three was my idea of belonging and home for many years. Then those bastards shut down BBC Three for global world. Whether I was in Bihar, Purnia, or whether I was in Calcutta, or whether I was in like Delhi, I created a sense of home based on like oral and books and whatever. Vikram said that home is where your books are. So similarly, you create sort of, and you are getting into a very interesting topic of integration and non-integration, which is constantly talked about. Like, people I know have lost their language trying to learn German. German is very monogamous, no polyamory with German. When you're learning German, you lose all your French or Urdu or whatever you've learned before. You just like focus on German and you learn it and you speak it imperfectly for the rest of your life. Even Germans look like as if they've just learned German. So it's a deep commitment, and you like lose a lot, but there's also like joy. You have to understand, once I got my permanent residence for which I had to learn German, I started enjoying learning German. Until then it was like I have to do B1, and just finish it, get my residence permit, I'm done. So language, they would like to say that language is a sense of belonging. I would say no. But they would say getting housing in Europe is a sense of belonging. It's impossible to find a flat in Berlin because everybody is wanting to come and hang out with the artists of Berlin. Artists, meanwhile, can't eat 2 meals a day. So IT people, our people, like Indians, are like taking up like some of the best properties. So the city is in front of me. The city is changing. It's going to become a dying city, or possibly a dead city like Europe, like London, pretty soon, where the best and the most beautiful will be kicked out of that city, as we've seen with South Bombay and stuff like that. So we don't belong anywhere, and that also answers the question about the global citizen. I think it's a big fraud, this whole idea of the global citizen, that, this sort of, people who can move around and carry their bottle of mango pickle. A lot of the IT industry people like move around. They still drive highways, long distances to hang around and talk about like things back at like the engineering college they went to, sort of a thing during Makar Sankranti. So this global citizen is a little bit of a myth, I think. People kind of carry their locality with them.
Maybe we should talk just shortly about the term of belonging, what it means. Because I moved somewhere. For 10 years I lived on the countryside in Austria, in a small house at a river with a forest around, and it was really idyllic. Yeah? And I fell in love with this place. I wrote a book about it at once, and I was really in love with the place, and I had really the impression to belong there. Yeah? And then after several years, I noticed, okay, I belong here, but the people around me, they do not think that I belong here. The house owner hated us, and he tried to get us out of the house, and I could not get any permission to do anything in the village, and so we had to move on. It was a sad love story.
Walden, like looking for our Walden.
Yeah.
So there was also a question about YouTube videos on growing Islamization.
Mm-hmm.
So if you
YouTube video, so the myth. Islamization, the Pakistani wife is not wife anymore. We've split up. We have a child though who's half Pakistani, half Indian, and all our life is based around how to get him a visa to come to hang around in one of these countries, sort of a thing, because we are very close to India, and he's also very close to Pakistan. So, and my book is called Absolute Jafar. The Jafar character is based on my son, Mir Jafar, the biggest gaddar in the world. So a friend of mine joked that wo kahin pe bhi cricket khelega, wherever he plays cricket, somebody in the audience in South Asia is going to call him a gaddar, which means a traitor. And then I named the book Absolute Jafar, which means the biggest gaddar, the biggest traitor in Bengal is Mir Jafar, because he allowed the British to come in. And so anyway, so that answers your question, hopefully. Islamization of
Europe.
We had the Syrians in Berlin. We had an open, but we also had Ukrainians. But depends upon my ophthalmologist told me that बहुत आ गए हैं वहाँ पे. A lot of Muslims have come. So I said, a lot of Ukrainians have also come. Then he says, तो वो तो उनके लोग हैं. That's their people. Just amazing. So Berlin is a very diverse city. You get the best of Kurdish falafels, Egyptian bread, Palestinian fool. Austria is fantastically diverse because of Vienna is some of the best gyros, and kebabs are fantastic. It's something to enjoy. The fact that it is not like a veg and mash kind of a city, which the British always complain about, like how Britain's purity. And I don't know why my ophthalmologist is so concerned about the Islamization of Europe. we are quite happy with that.
I think that was part of the question because the person who asked it seemed to think that, seemed to ask also that is this propaganda that we are being fed through YouTube.
Yeah. I think I quite like, I like to go to my Turkish tea chai shop, my Uzbeki roti shop. I would like to, I live in a very strong Palestinian neighborhood. Neukölln has the largest number of Palestinian people. My son wears a keffiyeh to school. We can do that. Europe, Berlin, I don't know about Europe, but Berlin still allows that. And we are very happy about that. I hope it stays like that. As far as radical Islam, yes, there are Salafi cells. There are Salafi cells in Vienna, for example, where a lot of radical Islam is there. But there's going to be everything, all types. Did we miss any other questions?
No, I think we've got them. Andreas, did you have
super.
something to say? Yes, please. Andreas, would you like to read something from your poetry?
Yes.
It's a good note to end on.
Yeah, just to finish it. I'll read a poem, and because I heard that in Jaipur there are a lot of snakes, and I wrote a poem about snakes. Yeah, you love snakes? Yeah, okay. Yeah, and I wanted to dedicate the poem today to the famous Austrian writer Valerie Fritsch, who on her endless travels around the world attended Jaipur Literature Festival today. She's here, and she loves snakes too. The snake. I never met the snake, but the wife did. The wife saw it, not me. I know that there are no snakes. There are no snakes, at least not here, not in our garden. This is what I told the wife God knows how many times. There are no snakes around here, I told her, just as there are no angels. But the wife is different. The wife sees snakes. The wife sits for days in her dark room and sees snakes. And I, who stay outside every day down by the river, cutting the trees, I do not see anything. Nothing except some yellow leaves and black twigs. Thin, smooth, black twigs, looking as though they had recently been cut and drifting upstream.
Very moving. Thank you. Thank you both for this wonderful session.